once again present information that we're learning from our user base that can inform hopefully the participants on how to help families connect to the assistance they need to get through the month. So if you can go to the next slide for me. For those of you who are new to this webinar series or just new to Propel, at Propel we build modern, respectful, and effective technology that helps Americans with limited income improve their financial health. And we do this through the Providers app, which you can see right here on the screen. With the Providers app, users can check their EBT card balance at any time, as well as their transaction history. And they can also view opportunities to save through coupons and a job board for them to be able to earn more money as well. If you go to the next slide, we are also the only app that allows people to see their benefits side by side with a free debit product. And this is, of course, of increasing importance as the federal government stands up more government benefit programs that are cash-based. Next slide, please. So before I jump into the survey, just a little bit about our user base. We have over 5 million monthly active users all across the United States, all 50 states and 3 territories. So it's quite a broad group of people. They're all EBT card holders. So this is the base from which we're drawing in this household pulse survey that we've been doing on a monthly basis since March 2020. So this survey takes about 10 minutes. It's multiple choice, but there are also some open response questions. The sample for the August survey we ran was almost 5,000 people, and it runs for the first 2 months, first 2 weeks of each month. So today I'll be talking about what we learned from surveying people in August. Next slide, please. So the findings, the main findings that we learned in August. First, it's the first month that we asked people receive the child tax credit payment, which are going on a monthly basis, started in July, but we asked people about it in August. And we found that the child tax credit made a big difference for the families that received it. Secondly, and on a worse note, but it's a trend we've been seeing for several months, the rates of housing insecurity and people spending at least one night in a shelter in the last 30 days have reached their highest level that we've seen so far. And unfortunately, few people have received rental assistance, but we are seeing that knowledge of assistance is increasing quite quickly. And finally, we did see that the food insecurity measures that we've been asking about since the beginning of this survey did all decrease in July among our users. Next slide, please. So digging into the July child tax credit, for those who aren't familiar, essentially households below a certain income with children under 18 are getting between $250 and $300 depending on the age of the child per child. And those first payments went out in July. So when we compared households with children under 18 who received the child tax credit in July with those who didn't, we saw that families that received it were more likely to say they were very certain they would be able to stay in their housing for the next 30 days, and that they had everything they needed in their home. And these families also were less likely to say they have been evicted, have slept in a shelter for at least one night in the past month, skipped meals in the past month, or say that they currently have less than $25 on hand. Next slide, please. So it's wonderful news. However, we do know that some portion of eligible households aren't receiving the payment. I'll get into those numbers towards the end of the presentation actually, but we did identify one trend at least in this survey, which is that Latinx respondents who are presumably eligible, they're living with children under 18, were far less likely to say that they received the first payment. Only 49% of them said that they had received the July child tax credit payment. They're also more likely to say they didn't know why they hadn't received the first payment. Um, and when we look at the language in which people answered the survey, people could answer the survey in English or in Spanish. Spanish language respondents had an even lower rate of saying that they received that first child tax credit payment. Only 38% did. I mean, we can also say that overall, among people who didn't get the child tax credit payment, but who are presumably eligible, 40% of them in August said they didn't know why they hadn't gotten it. So there is sort of this gap in knowledge about what steps people need to take, or, an explanation for why they haven't gotten this much needed cash benefit. Next slide, please. So moving on to, oh, sorry, I have some actually quotes from our users in their own words talking about how receiving this payment has affected their families. So I'll let people read these. Next slide, please. And here's some more on the impact of the payments from the users themselves. So it's sort of people seeing very, very appreciative, seeing it as a huge help, but also, right, there are limits to how much it can help given the very difficult situations that many families are in. Next slide, please. So this sort of naturally takes us into this question of housing. We saw it across the open-ended responses about, how did you spend the child tax credit, or how did it affect you? A lot of people talking about being able to pay rent, having overdue rent, paying for a hotel because they're homeless. So like I said, we're seeing the highest rates of housing insecurity. 12% of our users said they were living in unstable housing in the currently. So that's the highest we've ever seen. And 4.6% of users said they spent at least one night in a shelter in the past month, which is also the highest number we've seen. On the other hand, more people said that they paid their August rent on time, which is an increase of about 3 percentage points from July. So perhaps people who are in housing are finding the money to hold on, but a lot of people are in unstable housing. And here on the right, you can see in another user's words some of the struggles with trying to get help with rent. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, few people have received rental assistance, but we are seeing some change in terms of knowledge of the assistance, and that's a positive sign. So about 18% of respondents who are in need of assistance have gotten help with rent since the start of the pandemic. So pretty low given how high those housing insecurity numbers are. However, only about 22% of people said that they didn't know how to get help with rent. And that came down about 6 percentage points from last month, which is, I think, a positive sign of outreach with as it relates to emergency rental assistance. And if you go to the next slide, you can see we're actually helping get the word out within the app itself. We have a benefits hub, which is a section of the app that allows people to see the latest on all the government benefits that they might be interested in. And in particular, we've been pushing people through a partnership with the White House to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau's Emergency Rental Assistance Finder. And this is a tool that essentially allows people to go to one place and look up, based on where they live, their state, county, city rental assistance funds and how to apply. So since we launched this fairly recently, I want to say it was sometime in August, over 1 million users have accessed this tool. And here's actually a quote from a user in the August survey that talked about getting help from one of these funds in New Mexico. Next slide, please. So finally, sort of on a more positive note, we did see that these food insecurity measures that we've been tracking, like I said, since the start of this survey among our users, all of these measures, reporting that they skipped meals in the last 30 days, that they ate less, visited a food pantry, decided not to pay a bill, relied on others for meals, or went without prescription medicine, they all dropped, some quite substantially from July to August. So that's another good sign. That might be on account of people receiving the child tax credit, or receiving other assistance. Next slide, please. So I want to go into a little bit more with in a little more depth the child tax credit, since so many of our users have children. So many of the people that I'm sure the people on this webinar serve have children and are eligible for this assistance. So we've been tracking receipt of the monthly payment in a variety of ways, and the numbers vary across the different ways we ask, but we're really relying on this one tool. It's this like pop-up survey in our app. And we only ask people who say that they have children under 18 in the household, and they get this little pop-up and they can say pretty quickly, yes, I got the child tax credit, this payment this month. And looking at that, we saw that 83% of users that we surveyed in this way received the August payment. That's up 4 percentage points from last month, so for the first month in July. So this is also a really powerful survey because the survey I presented on in the first half of this presentation, that monthly household survey, there's a lag on it, right? We're asking people, at the beginning of August, what happened in July. And so through this pop-up, we're able to, ask people about a week out after that month's child tax credit payment goes out. Did you get it? Did you not get it? So for the August payment, we saw that 83% of people received it, which is an increase. However, there was this change in terms of people getting it via direct deposit versus mail checked. And some of you may have heard, if you're following this closely, that the IRS announced a couple of errors that occurred with the August payments, in which people, were all signed up to get their payment by direct deposit. They got it by direct deposit in July, but there was an error in which some portion of people got it by check instead. So it was a surprise. And presumably there was also a delay. So we saw that reflected in the numbers. There was like a 10 percentage point drop in people who got it by direct deposit and a 14 percentage point increase in people who got it by mail check. But we did see drops in people not receiving it from July, which is great, and people not being sure if they got it. And overall, what we've estimated is that 440,000 children who are in providers' households, so like their parents use the app, an additional 440,000 children we estimate received the child tax credit payment from July to August, which is a great thing to see. And we think that we've helped that increase happen as well. Next slide, please. So we've been following 10 families since July, and we're going to follow them through the beginning of next year. They're all families that are providers users, and they're all eligible for the child tax credit. So meaning that they have children under 18 in their households. And we've been interviewing them on a monthly basis and surveying them on a monthly basis to kind of fill out what we know about the impact and maybe some of the struggles with accessing this really important new program. And so I wanted to speak to that a little bit. So 8 out of the 10 families got the August payment, which is a win, an increase of 1 person from last month who started getting the payment. And we also found in our interviews that participants were really thinking about the benefits of getting the credit as a monthly payment versus getting it as a lump sum. Mostly preferring the monthly payment, but seeing some kind of, that there's a trade-off. We have, a participant who's raising her children by herself, and she was saying, getting this on a monthly basis is a huge help. This is how much I bring in. After I pay rent, I have $800 left. I don't get any help from my children's father because he's incarcerated. So I have $800 to work with on a monthly basis. Getting these monthly child tax credit payments is, frees me up so much more. $800 is not enough to make it work. Another participant who's actually one of the people who's not getting the child tax credit payment yet, even though she's eligible, hasn't been able to go to work because one of the people she works with got COVID, and she was like, I planned to save it if I got the money, but in this situation right now, I would use it. It would really help because I haven't been able to work for 2 weeks. On the other hand, another mother, I think, felt a little bit conflicted about getting the monthly payment instead of this lump sum that she normally does at tax time because she lives in housing that's in pretty bad shape. Come winter, she was telling us she has to have space heaters in every room, and it's resulted in her having almost $1,000 utility bill. I think it was in January of this year. I think that she's still paying off. So she get that big lump sum payment, she would be able to get the money together for deposit, first month's rent, and move out before, she's in the situation again this winter. And then just to briefly discuss those two issues that I mentioned with the August payments on the part of the IRS actually did affect some of the families in this study of ours. It's only 10 people, so we weren't necessarily expecting that. But there was one person who got her July payment by direct deposit, but got the August payment by check. And she told us she ended up paying $11 in fees to get that check cashed and be able to use the money, which is a pretty substantial loss that could have been avoided. And she also told us that her co-parent who gets a child tax credit payment for other children hasn't received his paper check yet because it was sent to his mom's address, but some of the details were missing, and so sort of no idea how he's going to get the August payment. And finally, there's also an error that occurred with people who file with ITINs. That's people who don't have social security numbers, and they got two payments in August instead of getting one in July and one in August. And one of our participants, that happened to her, and it was, I guess, a good surprise, but she just said, I thought it was a mistake, but then I was like, oh, the IRS doesn't make mistakes. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just showing you a little bit of how we're helping people access the information they need. We have in a variety of spots in the app, we have a calculator to estimate what your payment should be. We've sort of give people the information they need to create an account with the IRS so that they can go into the update portal and check the status of their payments. And in addition, next slide, please. I've shared this before, but we have a website that we've created called childtaxcredit.com that also answers frequently asked questions and directs people to where they need to go to sign up or to update their information and get these really important payments. And then I think that's it. Here's my email and a website, our website, joinpropel.com. If you go to /learn, it's actually a page where you can see a summary of what I just presented. I'm happy to take your questions now.
Thank you so much, Julieta. There's a lot of good quantitative and qualitative data that you've just shared with us. And I'm encouraging anybody who wants to ask some questions, please use the Q&A function in the bottom right of your WebEx screen. We've already had a few questions actually come in. So I'm wondering, Julieta, if you can speak to the impact of the Thrifty Food Plan increase, the TFP increase, and whether or how you will be assessing the looming SNAP cliff.
That's a great question. We actually published on this website that this page on our website that I shared here, joinpropel.com/learn, a piece that's focused precisely on that question. What I can say briefly is that we were really happy to see that there was a permanent change made to the Thrifty Food Plan. We did survey our users and find out that, and not surprisingly, most people didn't know that that some of the existing benefits increases that we're currently receiving were going to go away. And we also asked people if they had a plan, and they really didn't. But what we found is that throughout the pandemic, the additional increase in food benefits has made a big difference for people, and in terms of when we compare people who are getting um, additional SNAP or PBT versus those who aren't, there's a marked difference in terms of food insecurity. Um, but qualitatively, we still see, and quantitatively, that there's uh, still persistent food insecurity. And so in this piece that I'm talking about that's on our website, we kind of go into more detail as to why we think that is. Um, I so I hope that I've addressed your question a little bit. But I can also say that uh, a big part of the difficulty of new programs being stood up and then going away has been just a lack of information, and that's something that we definitely see when we talk to users, and that's something that we are trying to address. I'm sure all of you are as well. But within that benefits hub that I mentioned, one of the big it's a big lift for our on our part, but by my colleagues to track changes and communicate them in a very clear way by state to all of our users, which we have users in 50 states and 3 territories, so it's a lot of information to share out for them. But we've found that people really rely on that to sort of know what's going to happen or try to predict what's going to happen.
Actually, I had a question about that, about with people trying to get a hold of all of that data, it's a lot of moving deadlines. I'm wondering if you've received any information through your surveys about how people are receiving that information, what resources are most helpful for them.
Yes. Thank you for that question. So obviously, I think people are finding information within the app, since they can see information across all types of benefits that they receive or they might be eligible for. But in addition, in this sort of study where we're following families and interviewing them on a monthly basis, we've actually found that people are looking to social media for information, which maybe isn't new. Like we've talked about Facebook groups, there's been, press about people going on Reddit to find information, but our users have actually put us on to so one of them is a Spanish speaker, several YouTube channels in which there are people going on to like California state website and like screen sharing, a PDF that's explaining like PEBT changes and like going through it and in Spanish explaining what's going to be happening. So I was really astounded at the level of detail that that people are going into on YouTube, for example, to like communicate to families, Spanish-speaking families in particular, what to expect. And that's the kind of work that we do too. And my colleagues go through information and kind of distill it to in a useful format to our users. The other thing is that one of our study participants told us about a TikTok account that she follows that's like focused on taxes, and we've been following him as well, and he's really up to speed. Like he was communicating to people these IRS errors, like he's on top of everything that's happening with as it relates to the child tax credit. And one thing that we had heard from this study, but also in other ways we talk to users and survey users, is that people have worries about the child tax credit program, right? It's a new program. There's fear about having to pay things back. Like, what if they make a mistake and then I have to give some of this money back, but I've already spent it. And one of our users said, "Oh, I saw on this TikTok account that I follow, like everything he said has been accurate, and he said that we're not going to have to pay it back if, we are below a certain income," which was something we had also communicated to her directly, and she was like, "I'm not worried about it anymore." He said that that was the case, and he hasn't been wrong, and I was like, "Okay, so that's enough for you." So clearly, there is a great need to communicate to people in a clear way and in language that they understand, you know, in a different format, for example, like a visual format. And I'm thankful that there are some good people out there doing that in an accurate way, but something to think about perhaps if you're trying to reach your own communities.
Yeah, those trusted messengers are very important, and it's interesting to hear how effective social media can be in different forms. And it's good to know that those resources exist out on YouTube and TikTok, in addition to the more recreational videos that are on those platforms as
Right.
well. A quick question that I'm seeing in the comments is, are you able to track housing instability by state? Are you breaking that data down?
We do ask people what state they live in, and it's something we can look at. If you want to follow up with me actually directly at this email, I'd be happy to look into this for you. Um, I generally don't present information with a state by state breakdown on our website or in these presentations because I think that our power is in our reach, right? But once you break down into like how many users we have in each state, how many people respond to the survey in each state, those numbers get smaller and the power of the information we can share, the analysis we can do goes down. However, in the case of California, it's one of our top states every month that has a large population, a large portion of users respond to the survey who live in California. So that's an interesting thing to look for and something that we could do. It's just not generally a thing we can do with this survey, or not always with a lot of accuracy, because once we break down the data into smaller portions, um, it's less accurate. But I think I'm happy to answer if you follow up with me. Um, I guess we only have 1 minute left. Is there anything else I can answer?
Um, we have 1 minute left. I heard that your August data is just coming in. Are there one or two things that we can look forward to for next month's webinar in October?
Yes, I'm going to do this again on October 5th, I believe. So looking forward to that. But like I said, we survey users with that pop-up survey in terms of so we have more recent information, and what I can say is that it looks like we're continuing to make progress on the receipt of the child tax credit, and that it looks like maybe some of the gap in terms of Spanish speakers, Latinx participants is shrinking, which is great. And I look forward to sharing more in the webinar that we do in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it as well. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you to Julieta for doing all of this research and sharing your findings with us. We're looking forward to the next installment in October. And if anybody wants to reference back to this, first of all, check out joinpropel.com/learn, and also make sure to check out the FRAC YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist going right now, which is all of the webinars in this series. So you can reference back to this time last year and beyond. Thank you all so much, and have a good rest of your day.